Welcome on in, you rascals. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. I hope you're doing fantastic out there. If you guys could subscribe, that would be great, and appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. Your Miami Heat will be back in action on Friday. They got a back-to-back this weekend. Whew. Boston Celtics, Friday night. A lot of guys are up in the air. We'll see what who they end up playing, but Clippers did the same thing. Didn't really a whole hell of a lot matter against Miami. And then they got the Memphis Grizzlies on the road on Saturday night. So we'll see if Miami can get out of this funk. 5 losses in a row for your Miami Heat. 6 out of 7, that one win being the Washington Wizards. It is hard times down here in South Florida, as the great Dusty Rhodes used to say. But I wanted to bring this up. Haven't talked a lot about this man in a while because we basically dedicated like a month and a half to everything that was going on with what was his storyline. But this was brought up today. It's a pretty quiet day in Heatland, so I think it's an appropriate time to bring it up. And the reason I bring it up is there was an article he was actually interviewed for, and that is Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler gave some quotes. And a really well-done story by Mark Spears from Andscape, longtime NBA, I believe he's a Hall of Fame NBA writer. And there was a clip from this article that went that I got notified on. You know, you get all the Heat notifications. And it was one of those things where I didn't really understand why this was even aggregatable as far as the Heat was concerned. I didn't even find it to really be the more interesting part of the article. And the article really talks about how Jimmy Butler, you know, initially wanted to go to Phoenix, though we all know what ended up happening. Kevin Durant, he ends up going there, but he ends up getting to Golden State. They sign him to this big contract. And, you know, his relationship with Steph Curry and Draymond Green seems like it's gotten off on the right foot. Obviously, they have not basically lost. They would have lost one game with him when he plays, and that was like a Kyrie Irving 50-50 call. I mean, they could be this close to being undefeated when Jimmy Butler plays for them. But and they're playing the Kings right now. No Sabonis. This game's early on, so this game notwithstanding, their record has been tremendous with Jimmy Butler. And the part of the thing that got aggregated was this part, and it said, for the Golden State Warriors, Jimmy Butler said, "I saw a group that wanted me to be a part of it, and that's all you ever wanted to be, is wanted in this life, not just in this league, in anything. You want to be wanted. Needed is like a necessity. Wanted is like somebody's choosing to bring you aboard this. I think it's the ultimate sign of respect. I talked to both Steph Curry and Draymond Green, but I've talked to them both for a while, but they said, we could do something special. We need what you bring, the winning mentality, the hard nose on both sides of the ball, and I think that's what you want, and I think that's what they told me I bring, and I'm like, come on with it." Butler, this is just the article written by Mark, Butler wanted to be traded because he felt like the Heat were moving in a direction without him in mind, and he wanted to be more valued, sources said. The 4-time NBA All-Star ended up asking for a trade from the Heat in his 7th season with the franchise. Okay, and that's what I'm saying, like this part here where it says Butler wanted to be traded because he felt like the Heat were moving in a direction without him in mind. We have heard that. I mean, not to rehash all of this, just because it's kind of been there, done that. But like when you say I wanted to be more valued, it's a code for he wanted his contract. We all know that. I know all the other window dressing that was out there about, you know, the Miami Heat were turning a tide to Tyler Hero and a more offensive centric, you know, theme this year. And there was talk they couldn't trust Jimmy Butler because he wasn't available enough. And whatever, dude. I thought when all this happened, and everybody knows me on the record with all of this, my entire take the entire time was just give Jimmy Butler his extra year. I thought that he deserved it, and I knew what the ramifications were going to be if they didn't. And then it got to the point with the drama where you also knew there was no turning back, and you should have done right by the guys in the locker room just to move on with all of this because it had become a mess. The Heat got arrogant in thinking that, everybody was going to hunker down at some point this season, and they took, they did not realize the lengths Jimmy would go to make a stink. And then I think that, we all know how pissy the divorce got, and we got to this point. The problem with all of it is, for Miami right now, it could not have gone worse since all of this has happened. The Miami Heat have gone completely in the toilet since they have made this trade. They're getting called out by it, frankly, by national platforms. We mentioned the Jeff Teague thing earlier this week, but ESPN's Hoop Collective podcast did an entire segment just dedicated to what a disaster this trade has been for the Miami Heat. And the interesting thing about it is when you read this is like, you hear all those quotes from Jimmy Butler and all this stuff and them wanting to be a part of it. And it's like, he was a very expensive plan B, but sometimes the plan B works out better. It does. I mean, the Warriors, they kind of fell ass backwards into it. And I've said this, the Warriors always feel like they've always had this leg up on the Miami Heat that I've been jealous of. But they've also gotten some pretty incredible breaks throughout their career, throughout their, Steph Curry run as well. And the funny thing is, if you really think about some of the things that have dropped in their lap, like they had the number 2 pick, blew it. They didn't take care of their legend, Klay Thompson. There are things that didn't exactly go fantastic for the Warriors, and they've had some lean times too. But they were able to get over the mountaintop the one year where Jimmy Butler missed his shot against the Boston Celtics. And, Boston just wasn't ready for those bright lights. They needed them turned off. And all of this because Kevin Durant did not want to reunite there. They end up with Jimmy Butler. But, hey, it might have been exactly what they needed. It may have worked out better than if they got Kevin Durant back because for this year, this guy, whatever his trajectory is going to be 2 years from now when the Heat were scared to pay him, this team with an all-time great like Steph Curry at his side and playing like a maniac the way that he is, I can't discount it. I know what kind of competitor Jimmy Butler is in the playoffs, but plan Bs work out sometimes, dude. They do. Look. You could look no further than the Miami Heat when they were making trades all around. And there was supposed to be a trade, I believe, to send Goran Dragic away from the Miami Heat in the run. And Dallas reneged on the deal because they thought they said Derrick Jones Jr. on the line. And that ended up completely blowing up a trade. And Goran Dragic got to stick around and he was awesome for the Miami Heat. It happens. Yeah, this was the story back in the day. At some point, Miami became convinced they were sending Goran Dragic to Dallas. The two sides have been arguing about a miscommunication. They thought that they were getting Kelly Olynyk and Derrick Jones Jr. And this was something that was supposed to get the Jimmy Butler sign and trade to go through. So pretty wild that it does work out for you sometimes. This would, different means, obviously, because Kevin Durant didn't want to go, but they were in a situation. But Jimmy Butler said in this, he says, did his end in Miami affect him mentally? He says, I'm great. Why wouldn't I be? I'm great. Basketball is not difficult. Basketball is not the only thing that I do. Basketball does not define me. I'm in a really good headspace. He said, Steph Curry said he's been super consistent and professional. There's been a lot of eyeballs on him all season. Love the way that he's approached everything. Me and Draymond walk around and talk about how we don't ask anybody to be anyone other than themselves. It says that Jimmy Butler has been living in a posh downtown hotel as he's looking to find a new home. He wants to open up a big face coffee shop in the Bay Area. I gotta wonder how that's doing in Miami. I might drive by it, next week, see what's what over there at that old Big Face. Is it still running? Is it still going? Is it still operating? I know that they had really short hours. I never made my way over to Big Face Coffee, and I drove by it once, but I never went in and tried the coffee because I always found it on. I think their hours were 9 a.m. to 1, which are basically when I get to work and when I'm out of work. And I'm like, who gets coffee in this very small window? I guess the whole thing is to be seen, take Instagram photos, and get merch. I don't know. He's been playing a lot of dollars. And then he said, okay, this is the close of the article. I'm here now. The organization is great. The guys are great. The winning is great. We do any and everything it takes to win here. That's what makes my mental so great. We're winning again. I love the spirit that surrounds it. I do. There's no talking about myself, which is great. Let me go drink my coffee, play my dominoes, and leave me alone. That was the close of the article. And that's an interesting thing here with Jimmy, right? Jimmy loves a lot of the stuff that does come with being a star, but he doesn't necessarily love the response. Remember, there's this whole talk of like the face of the NBA. Jimmy Butler very much thinks that at a certain point, like, this guy is one of the best basketball players on the planet. You know, I remember him coming off the Knicks floor. Was it best player in the world, comes off the floor, kicks your ass, you know? Like, his confidence was very, very sky high. But I don't think that he loved the idea of, like, being the face of the Miami Heat and being at all the ribbon cuttings and all that stuff and doing all the interviews clearly and talking and doing the walk-offs with even the local broadcast or any of that stuff. Come there, check in, play your ass off, go home, hang out with Neymar, do your celebrity thing, make your country albums, do all your side quests. And the thing with being on the Warriors is it's never going to be him having to do all that. Like, they have legitimately Steph Curry, one of the top 2 faces in the league, the basketball messiah of their franchise, and Draymond Green, who of course like is the voice of the team and is doing his podcast and is going to do all that. He literally can be in the perfect position here of being in the shadows and being the complimentary piece. And he's playing with the best guy he's probably ever played with in his career. Like, outside of, I guess, a year of Joel Embiid being at the peak of his powers. Dwayne Wade was, you know, not at the peak of his powers when he played in Chicago. Probably had the best resume up to that point. And no, but Steph Curry's like, you know, he's a rock star, dude. And he's just like, I'm here to win. I'm going to here and help. I got my extension. I'm going to do everything I can to help Steph Curry win. And that's all I have to do. And that's it. So the thing that the Heat are in, why am I going to, you know, all right, we've talked enough there, but like where the Heat are at right now is like, look, the Heat are in this spot where when it comes to this Jimmy thing, they are down 0-3 in the series right now, dude. Like, it's one of those where, like, I've heard some of the piping that's come up from any Jimmy Butler stuff, and I'm them trying to still defend and all that stuff. And I get your want to do that right now. It's just a tough look to do it when you're playing as terribly as they are. And right now, the Miami Heat, they're in a spot where they're at a true crossroads, because this was an opportunity presented to the 2 other guys that they did invest in, Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero, to take the reins and see what they can do. And it has blown up in their face awfully. And meanwhile, he's on the other side of America with one of the most popular players all time, and they are killing it. So I would say for right now, anything that the Heat have to say they feel like they got to say, you're not going to win that battle right now, right? I was reading some article on Twitter, or not an article. I was reading a tweet. It was like a blurb from Ramona Shelburne she was on, I think, the Bay Area, their flagship. And she was like, yeah, you know, he doesn't need to be told when to work out or get his body fat checked. It's like, this is the stuff where I start rolling my eyes like, okay, but like this was stuff that he was like in love with a couple of years ago, you know, like, oh, I love the Heat culture. I love waking up at 3 a.m. Remember, the funny thing was Kevin Love was making fun of Jimmy Butler for like, I'm working out at 3 a.m. That was, hey, when we were at Kaiser training camp. Hey, look, man, things change. But right now, the Heat are not, this is going to be what's going to happen. I'm just letting Heat fans know. It is going to be a Warriors love fest. They're playing great. They're an unbelievably popular franchise. They are, you know, they have one of the most popular players on the planet. And this man is helping him win a lot of games. And maybe, I don't think they'll win the championship, but I'm not going to say they don't have a chance at the championship. Knowing how good he is in the playoffs and knowing how good Steph Curry is and knowing, how much those guys have done winning in the playoffs. And for the Heat standpoint, you just got to kind of eat it right now. And I would say for the Heat, here's what you got to do. If you're in that front office and you're Pat Riley and you're whoever, you got two things. You got the LeBron basically Christmas game reincarnated coming up on the 25th, and you better hope like hell, offer Bam and Tyler a bonus, whatever you got to do, a wink, because Jimmy Butler's coming for blood in that game, and you're gonna possibly have your Tobias Harris over me moment in that situation, and so you better hope that you do well in that game. But the way they're playing right now, I don't know how much faith you can have in that. And then the other thing is you just got to hope the Warriors don't win, certainly this year. And then you have to hope that your bet was right, because the whole root of all of this, and it's hard to feel this right now just because you look so bad in all of this because of how you're playing and how they're playing. The bet in all of this is, what does he look like the next 2 years? Does a guy who plays that rugged, who has the injury issues that he does that look good next year? Even if he doesn't have to be the feature guy, him making $60+ million the next couple of years, you need to hope like hell they don't win this year. Whatever additions they're going to make next year, trading Kuminga, whatnot, they won't be there in that position next year. And that at 37, you're like, whew. It's almost like it's like the PJ Tucker case, but obviously way bigger and a way more important figure. But it's like, remember the Heat were like, we're not paying PJ Tucker a third year. And, you suffered of losing PJ Tucker initially, but then it was like, yeah, but we were kind of right on that one. Obviously, Jimmy's not PJ Tucker. He's much more astronomical of a basketball player. But the Heat need to be in the standby right now. Right now, any talking you're going to do, you might as well, if you're a Heat front office, brass member, pundit, earmuff it, put your head in the stand like an ostrich, pop it up in June, and hope the Warriors didn't win. That's all you can do. Because right now, you're just not in a position for anything to go well. The only thing you could really hope for right now is, by some miracle, the team plays better basketball, the Heat. But yeah, this whole thing about, I didn't feel valued. Yeah, we know we didn't feel valued contract. We know they didn't pay him a contract that pissed him off. That's what set all of this off. That is the numero uno. That's what it is. We don't have to code it. We don't have to sugarcoat it. And even if he wasn't the Warriors playing, who cares? We're here where we are. And where we are is their team is great. The Heat are in the toilet. Now the Heat have to make sure that the bet they didn't want to make on Jimmy Butler and also doing right and giving him the reward contract, the golden parachute at the end, because they thought he wasn't going to be that kind of an impact player. Now you kind of got to hope that that's right. When you're in a position right now where the Heat are at, the team being in its worst losing streak of the season, the record being as bad as it is, and Jimmy being where he's at right now, all you can hope for is that by some means they lose in the second round and you're like, whew, all right, he's not hoisting up the trophy. And then maybe the Warriors reload, but you got to hope that your bet was right, that you didn't want to pay him at the age of 37 because of his durability issues, and hope that pays off for you. But for right now, you just gotta kind of keep quiet and eat it and lay in the weeds and hope that it pays off for you. Because right now, yeah, it looks bad. There's no other way to cut it, slice it, mold it. It is what it is right now. And as they always say, like, the winners get to write history. Yeah, right now the Warriors get to peacock about how great everything is. And that's going to be thrown in every fan's face. And you can choose to either let it, bother the holy hell out of you. I think what bothers the holy hell out of me is more just how the team is playing. The trade was inevitable. That started upsetting me in the middle of the year. But there's no doubt about, like, you drew your line in the sand. But you better damn well, Miami Heat, have a plan from this to get back to greener pastures. because this is not acceptable to the fan base. You did make your stand. You did it with a bit of a confidence, an overconfidence, a cockiness, a brashness, and arrogance because you felt like, we don't need this guy. We're sick of being in the play-in. We're not doing anything significant with him anymore. Well, then you better have a pivot. This cannot be, we're not going to go into, years of trying to meander through to get this done and then you finally figured out by some luck or means that you pulled off cap hocus pocus to get him here. So I think there's a lot of pressure on this front office this upcoming year. I really, really do. And curious to know where everybody kind of is at their crossroads. What does a year like this mean? I know even to the future O'Reilly, I don't think Spo leaves coaching, but is there an exhaustion point for him? I mean, this pretty trying year on him. And then there's also the pettiness from all of them. Are they really, you think that these guys, everybody who's been in this organization for 30 years, 30 plus years, you think they're all going to be like, oh, this is going to be the year we're going to walk off on? No bleeping shot. There's going to be that mindset too. So it's going to be a fascinating thing to see how it all plays out. But for right now, there's not much you can say on all of this because it could not be going in more opposite directions for each side of this. Jimmy's up by a lot right now.